The Unas princess's anguished screams echoed through the jungle as her alien classmates abandoned her, leaving her to perish alone on the lethal planet Zorgax. In the bustling market of the Unas homeworld, Xyloth leaned in close to Nyreen, his voice low with intrigue. "Did you hear about what happened to Princess Prylar at the Galactic Academy?" Nyreen's eyes widened. "No, what happened?" "During a field trip to Zorgax, her own classmates abandoned her in the jungle, all because she advocated for peace with other races, going against our ways of conquest. They left her to die, hoping to remove her as a political obstacle." "That's horrible. Prylar is so brilliant and kind. How could they do that?" Nyreen gasped. Xyloth nodded gravely. "It seemed hopeless for her. Zorgax is a death trap, filled with vicious predators and treacherous terrain. No Unas has ever survived alone there." "So what happened to the princess?" Nyreen asked, her voice trembling. "That's the incredible part," Xyloth said. "A human classmate, Frank Porter, noticed she was missing and went back for her. Can you imagine the bravery? A human, of all species, risking his life to save an Unas royal on the deadliest planet in the galaxy." Nyreen's jaw dropped. "That's insane. Humans are so puny and primitive compared to us. What happened next? Did they make it out alive?" Xyloth grinned, his sharp teeth glinting. "Well, that's the story everyone is dying to hear. If Frank fails, Princess Prylar will perish, and her dreams of interspecies cooperation will die with her. But if a human can save her against all odds, it could change everything about how we view their kind. The future of the Unas Empire may depend on what happens next on Zorgax." Xyloth leaned forward, his eyes gleaming with excitement as he continued the tale. According to the reports, Frank used his advanced human tracking technology to locate Prylar in the dense jungles of Zorgax. When he found her, she was badly injured and surrounded by a pack of Zorgax prowlers. Nyreen shuddered. "Those six-legged monsters are the stuff of nightmares. Their venomous claws can paralyze a victim in seconds, and their camouflage ability makes them almost impossible to spot until it's too late." "Exactly," Xyloth agreed. But Frank didn't hesitate. He pulled out a handheld device called a sonic emitter and aimed it at the prowlers. The high-frequency sound waves disoriented the creatures, causing them to flee in confusion. "Incredible," Nyreen marveled. "I've never heard of such a device. And then what happened?" Frank rushed to Prylar's side and assessed her wounds. Using a medical kit he had brought with him, he applied advanced human antibiotics and a regenerative gel to her injuries. The technology was far beyond anything our own medics possess. Nyreen shook her head in disbelief. Most Unas would have left Prylar to die to save their own skin, but Frank risked his life to save her, even though she's not even his own species. "That's the thing about humans," Xyloth said. "Their culture values compassion and helping others, even at great personal risk. It's a trait we could learn from." "But how did they survive long enough to be rescued?" Nyreen asked, her curiosity piqued. "Zorgax is a death trap, and they were stranded deep in the jungle." Xyloth grinned, his sharp teeth glinting in the sunlight. But that's just the beginning of the story. Frank's resourcefulness and bravery were put to the test in ways you can't even imagine. What he did next will go down in legend." Xyloth's eyes sparkled with admiration as he continued the incredible tale. Frank and Prylar spent several days stranded in the deadly jungles of Zorgax, waiting for rescue. But even in such dire circumstances, Frank's human ingenuity shone through. He used his knowledge of xenobiology to identify which strange plants were safe for them to eat, and he built them shelters each night from the huge leaves and vines, protecting them from the elements. Nyreen's eyes widened in amazement. "That's incredible. Most Unas wouldn't have had a clue how to survive in that alien wilderness, even with all our advanced tech. We never bothered to study other planets' ecosystems." Xyloth nodded. "Exactly. But Frank's quick thinking didn't stop there. He scavenged components from his damaged human communicator and Prylar's Unas tech. Somehow, he jerry-rigged the parts into a distress beacon. By boosting the signal, he was able to reach frequencies monitored by the Galactic Academy's emergency responders." "A marvel of human adaptability," Nyreen said, shaking her head in wonder. So that's how they survived long enough for help to arrive, but it must have been a harrowing ordeal, injured and waiting, not knowing if the signal got through. Indeed. But in that time something extraordinary happened, Xyloth said with a smile. As they worked together to survive, Frank and Pryla had long conversations, learning about each other's cultures and beliefs. Frank shared his human philosophy of cooperation between races and finding common ground, and Pryla expressed how much she admired human resilience and flexibility. Nyreen's brow furrowed. A human and an Unas forming a friendship. After all the distrust and antagonism between our kinds, that's hard to imagine. And yet, through this crisis, they forged a deep bond of mutual understanding and respect, Xyloth said. Two individuals from drastically different backgrounds finding connection. It's a powerful symbol of what's possible between races if we open our minds. Nyreen pondered this, her worldview shifting. You're right. If a human and an Unas can build a friendship through such hardship, maybe there's hope for a new era of interspecies cooperation after all. Xyloth grinned, his sharp teeth flashing. Oh, but the story doesn't end there. What happened next when rescue finally arrived will astonish you even more. The most incredible part is yet to come. Nyreen leaned forward, her eyes wide with anticipation. So what happened when the rescue team arrived? I can't imagine their surprise at finding Frank and the princess alive. Xyloth nodded, a grin spreading across his face. Oh, they were shocked, all right. When they landed on Zorgax, they expected to find 2 bodies at best. Instead, they discovered Frank and Pryla not just surviving, but thriving in a small camp they'd set up near a freshwater spring. A camp on Zorgax? Nyreen gasped. How did they manage that? Frank's ingenuity knew no bounds, Xyloth said. Using nothing but the natural resources around them, he built a sturdy shelter from woven vines and branches. There was even a fire pit for warmth and cooking, and a rudimentary fish trap in the nearby stream. Nyreen shook her head in disbelief. I never would have thought a human capable of such resourcefulness. Our survival instructors at the academy always emphasized our species' superiority in adapting to harsh environments. And yet there was Frank, proving them all wrong, Xyloth chuckled. The rescue team, a mix of Unas and other races, couldn't help but be impressed by his skills. Even the most stubborn Unas had to acknowledge his incredible feats. I'm surprised they would admit that, Nyreen said. Una's pride is not easily set aside, especially when it comes to humans. Xyloth nodded. True, but Frank's actions spoke louder than any preconceived notions. His bravery and ingenuity in saving Princess Pryla forced many Unas to reconsider their long-held stereotypes about humans. Nyreen sat back, mulling over this revelation. It's amazing how one individual's actions can challenge an entire species' beliefs. So, what happened when the rescue team was ready to leave? I'm sure Frank and Pryla were eager to return to civilization. A mischievous glint appeared in Xyloth's eyes. Actually, that's where the story takes an even more incredible turn. As the rescue ship prepared to depart, Frank made a surprising announcement. He had decided to stay on Zorgax and continue exploring the planet. What? Nyreen exclaimed. Why would he do that? Zorgax is a death trap. Frank believed there was still much to learn from Zorgax's unique ecosystem, Xyloth explained. He thought that understanding the planet could hold the key to improving relations between our species. And incredibly, Princess Pryla was so inspired by Frank's courage and curiosity that she chose to join him. Nyreen's jaw dropped. The princess stayed too? I can't believe it. What about her duties, her family? What will the Emperor say? Xyloth leaned back, his expression cryptic. Now that's the most astonishing part of the tale. The Emperor's reaction and the consequences of Frank and Pryla's decision will surprise you more than anything you've heard so far. But I'm afraid that will have to wait for another time. Nyreen gasped, her eyes wide with disbelief. The Emperor disowned his own daughter. That's unheard of in Una's history. Xyloth nodded gravely. His pride and stubbornness blinded him. In his mind, Pryla's friendship with Frank was a betrayal of Una's values. He saw her as tainted by human influence. But to strip her of her royal title and declare her an enemy of the state, that's extreme even for the Emperor, Nyreen said, shaking her head. Indeed. And it didn't stop there, Xyloth continued. The Emperor was so enraged that he ordered a fleet of Una's warships to Zorgax. Their mission was to capture Pryla and eliminate Frank, no matter the cost. Nyreen's brow furrowed. Surely Frank and Pryla couldn't stand against an entire Una's fleet. Even with Frank's ingenuity, they were just two individuals on a hostile planet. A sly grin spread across Xyloth's face. Ah, but that's where the story takes an incredible turn. When the Una's fleet arrived at Zorgax, they were met with an unexpected sight. Frank and Pryla had made contact with a previously unknown species native to the planet, the Zorgax Sentinels. The Zorgax Sentinels? I've never heard of them, Nyreen said, leaning forward in her seat. Few have. They're an advanced intelligent species that had been observing Frank and Pryla's actions on their world. The Sentinels were impressed by the pair's compassion and willingness to learn from other cultures, so much so that they decided to share their own advanced technology with them. Nyreen's eyes widened. What kind of technology? Xyloth's grin widened. The kind that could protect them from an entire Una's fleet. The Sentinels gave Frank and Pryla a powerful energy shield, capable of withstanding even the most advanced Una's weapons. Incredible. So the Una's fleet was forced to retreat, Nyreen asked. Exactly. Faced with the Sentinels' superior technology and the prospect of a diplomatic incident, the Una's fleet had no choice but to withdraw. It was a humiliating defeat for the Emperor. Nyreen shook her head in amazement. I can't imagine how furious he must have been. The great Una's empire bested by a human and a rogue princess. Xyloth's expression turned somber. The Emperor's fury knew no bounds. In his rage, he declared war on the Sentinels and any species that supported Frank and Pryla's cause. The galaxy descended into chaos as lines were drawn and alliances formed. And what of Frank and Pryla? Nyreen asked, her voice hushed. They emerged as leaders of a new interspecies alliance, dedicated to promoting peace and understanding between all races. Their bravery and compassion had inspired others to stand up against the Emperor's tyranny. Nyreen sat back, stunned by the story's outcome. To think a human and an Una's inadvertently sparking a galactic conflict, it's almost too much to believe. Xyloth leaned forward, his eyes intense. But that's the thing, Nyreen. The conflict was always brewing beneath the surface. Frank and Pryla's actions simply brought it to light. They showed us that individuals from different backgrounds can come together to create something greater than themselves. Nyreen nodded slowly, absorbing Xyloth's words. Their story will be remembered for generations, not for the war it started, but for the hope it inspired. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.